Nice. Okay. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We want to start tonight first by centering a land acknowledgement. So this evening, we are going to be talking a lot about things like food provisioning, ecological life cycles, and access. All these things are really intricately tied to the land. And land is in turn bound up with the people who have lived on it and with it for generations. So here at Dartmouth, we're on Abenaki land. It is ancestral and unceded. And this is a really tenuous acknowledgement that we shouldn't take lightly, but rather sit with pretty uncomfortably throughout this discussion tonight and onward, especially for those of us who are settler colonizers here. I'm going to drop a few links in the chat with resources for people to learn more about the Abenaki people and also to participate in monetary reparations if you so choose. And Vivian, do you want to say a quick word about whose land you're on right now?
Yes, so Groundcycle, we're working in Brooklyn, New York, and it was originally Lenape land.
Cool. So I think Rachel and I will start with introducing ourselves briefly before we introduce Vivian. So Rachel and I are both interns in the sustainability office, and we're seniors. So I don't know if we need to say more than that, but
sounds perfect. Yeah.
Cool. And then, so brief introduction for Vivian before she tells us more about herself. Vivian recently left her design career to fill the massive composting gap in New York City at the onset of the pandemic by founding Groundcycle. So Groundcycle collects compost scraps from New York residents in exchange for farm fresh produce, improving access to fresh food, reducing food waste, and connecting New Yorkers and nearby farms to each other. Vivian is especially passionate about expanding access to New York City's green programs to all residents of the city.
Sweet. And before we get started talking about that incredible bio and more about what Vivian does, just want to lay down a few quick ground rules. First is, as we mentioned at the start, we are recording, and this will be available afterwards for both the audio on SoundCloud and the video on YouTube. We also, oh, I forgot to do this, but let me enable right now. Okay, great. There should be a live transcript going at the bottom of your screen. Sorry that I forgot to do that up until this point. And then just to tell you a little bit about the format tonight, we are going to do about 30 to 35 minutes of a conversation between the three of us. But we definitely want to leave plenty of time at the end for questions. So keep your questions in mind as we're going throughout. They can be dropped in the Q&A section. And then we will read them out loud for Vivian to answer. Definitely feel free to put them there like anytime. Doesn't have to wait until the end of our conversation. And then the last thing is that we just want to be really clear and upfront that this is a space for open-mindedness, respect, and mutual support. And tonight there will be no room for hate or prejudice of any type, including but not limited to racism, classism, ableism, and sexism. But yeah, just as focusing on the positive things, definitely lots of support and understanding and curiosity, I think, is what we're hoping to center tonight. So without further ado, I think we're going to go ahead and kick it off. Thank y'all for sticking with us through the intro. And Jess, you want to fire off the first question?
Yeah, Vivian, to kick things off, can you tell us a little bit about the story of Groundcycle? And yeah, we'd especially love to hear about the community needs you were responding to and what kind of motivated you to take action.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Vivian, and I actually have a short PowerPoint presentation to kind of give you guys some visuals on what Groundcycle is. So I'll just be sharing my screen. Okay, here we go. So Groundcycle is a business that I created last May when the city suspended the brown bin program, which is a compost pickup service here in Brooklyn or all throughout the city. But the canceled composting program led me to start my own business and deal with this problem of organic waste and also sourcing local fresh produce from farmers. And our mission is closing the loop between produce and compost. So yeah, like I said, on May 4th, the city suspended the brown bin program. And in New York City, 1/3 of the residential organic waste is, or 1/3 of the waste is organic. So that means that it can be composted and not end up in landfill. So if you think about it, it's a huge problem. And I'm sure you guys are aware that, when organic material ends up in landfill, it's up to 25 times more harmful than carbon. So that's a significant problem that we're dealing with in the city right now. And this is what you see on the streets right now in Brooklyn and all over the city is a lot of non-organic material piling up, and these brown bins that were originally supposed to transport organic waste is not being used anymore. So it's a huge problem. And when drop-offs and this program canceled, I thought to connect with local farms to connect people's waste and also bring them food. So I thought of this bin swap program. This is just a quick video of, the circular process that I'm talking about of harvesting food locally and also disposing of this organic waste that is really valuable material. And this is an image of, describing what the bin swap program is. Basically, you get this 5-gallon garden bin and you give us your compost scraps and we bring it to the farm, bring back farm fresh produce for you, and you get that in a form of a swap. So it's super easy for people to participate in and it goes straight to your door. So what we're trying to do is really connect the two and make people understand that food equals waste, waste equals food. It's a completely circular system. This is an image of a lot of the scraps that we're collecting that are getting brought to local farms. And when I began this program, it was kind of a weekend project that I was doing while I was working my architecture job. And I've always been interested in sustainability. And when I saw how people were responding to the program that I had created with, just a small group of 13 friends, it kept growing and growing week after week. So 2 months into the project, I quit my architecture job and began working on Groundcycle full time. And soon after, we were actually noticed by the New York Times, and an article came out talking about our initiative, which obviously gave us a lot of interest and let people know what we were doing. And immediately, more and more people started signing up. And this is kind of a, just a look at what we do is we transport all this farm fresh produce all around Brooklyn, and all the scraps get collected in these bins. It gets sorted, all the contaminants like produce stickers and twist ties and all of that kind of stuff gets pulled out before it gets to the farm, because those things don't decompose. And we also do have a compost hub drop-off for the public every Sunday, and this is at a community garden in Brooklyn. So anybody really can come and drop off their produce, pick up a bag of farm fresh produce, and we think it's really important that to offer this kind of service as well, along with the private at-home service, because everybody deserves to compost. And what we're really trying to do is connect people who are interested in doing what they should be doing for the environment, and also local farmers who are working super hard to produce all this really great food. And we want to prevent as much food waste as possible, help them distribute their produce, and save as many scraps too. And that's the end of the little presentation that gives you a little background on what Groundcycle is and a little bit of background about me.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Vivian. One of my immediate questions is really asking, like, what was it like to start your own business and to kind of recognize this need in your community while you were working your other job, but to take the initiative and sort of eventually the leap of faith in like creating your own business in Groundcycle? Where did you even begin? What was the process like? And how did you ultimately get it up off the ground?
So I started Groundcycle as a way to deal with my own needs of dealing with my own organic waste because we were all at home at the time. It was lockdown. Everybody was kind of confused about what was going on. And but one thing stays the same is that we're all cooking and eating at home. So we're all producing these scraps, and with nowhere to put them, it was really becoming really uneasy for me to do because every meal that I was eating, I was feeling really guilty knowing how many scraps were piling up in the kitchen. And I just started doing a lot of research on how other cities are composting, other initiatives, and I'm by no means an expert at, processing compost or growing my own food, but I just really saw one side of people not being able to divert their organic waste, and then the other side of farmers not being able to get their food to people. I think we've all seen those articles of like the mountains of potatoes in the field that never got to anybody to be consumed. So that was just really jarring to me. And after that, I just started contacting farmers. I made like 40 calls in a day, trying to see if people were interested in an idea like this. And it just really started very, very quickly for me. I think from the time that I thought of the idea, after like 3 days of intense research, um, the first bin swap happened 2 weeks after that. And I just started asking some friends in Brooklyn, hey, do you want farm fresh produce? Do you want me to collect your scraps? Let's just start this. I ordered bins offline, it really was an iterative process. And, the very first week, I remember it was the longest day ever of driving to the farm, then back, then delivering. And it was really a week by week process of streamlining things and figuring out how I can do it better. What are the needs of the people? What are the needs of the farmer? And now we're months into it and still working on the idea. It's not ever, set in stone. Like this is all we're doing. We're constantly working through ideas, and that's the most exciting part of it for me.
That's really cool. It sounds like it was definitely trial by fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of this like sort of iterative process, I know last time we talked, you had mentioned that you're always looking for like more feedback or like ideas or ways that you could improve. And so I did want to just throw in a quick plug for anyone in the audience who's listening and has ideas. I know like you said that you were open to suggestions. And so yeah, if people want to throw things in the chat, that'd be awesome. Also, I would love to like also just hear a little bit more about like how like you managed to constantly be adapting and improving, and especially within the past couple of months where things have been very, I guess, volatile.
Yeah. And can I tag on a question to that as well with what Jess mentioned about like ideas for ways to expand? I think Vivian, when we've talked, you've mentioned a couple of these sort of like projects or initiatives that have been brought up by like other community members or just have sort of like emerged spontaneously? And maybe if you could talk about a few of those like project ideas that you've already taken on to give folks an idea of, you know, what might be fair game or the directions that you're headed in and thinking about.
Yeah, I think we've had to be super adaptable through our entire process because right now in the world everything's so uncertain, and whatever comes up we're always dealing with. So for example, I think just a month into Groundcycle existing, was the huge Black Lives Matter movement erupting, and we really felt like we needed to do something at the time, even though we were pretty small. You know, probably less than 50 people signed up. Um, we educated our audience on, you know, Black farmers and why there have been injustice in that. And we donated all of our profits to Black-owned farms, Black and female-owned farms. We also helped fundraise for those uh, various initiatives and just support them in general. And this is an ongoing thing that we're always trying to support other organizations that need our help. Um, in December and January, we did a non-perishable food drive. And also one of our bin swap members approached me, and she was a yoga teacher and teaches on an online platform. So we fundraised through a New Year's Eve class and put together all of these farm fresh produce bags and gave them out to the community at community fridges, which community fridges are super important to us because they're a step above composting. You know, a lot of supermarkets and businesses waste a lot of food at the end of the day, and before it can be should be composted, it should be that food should be distributed to communities. So that's another initiative that we love supporting. And yeah, we're always interested in engaging with the community and seeing where we can use our network of supporters to help other causes. And throughout this year, I have a lot of exciting plans for collaborations and how people can get involved through us. So it's not just really a business, but it's really a community that we're building of really conscious consumers. And it's been really inspiring to meet so many awesome people because whoever's involved with us are similar minded, and that's just amazing to hear all of the ideas being exchanged. And whenever I get a suggestion, I'm always looking into how I can make that a reality.
Really. Wow, it sounds like it's been a really beautiful, I hate to say it, but like organic process that you've been through. That's a terrible pun. I'm sorry. Anyways, I am wondering also throughout this process, what have been some of your biggest challenges, but also what have been some of your biggest sources of encouragement for you and sustaining this for nearly a year at this point, 9 or 10 months maybe?
Yeah, almost a year. That's crazy. I think definitely the hard part has been, yeah, just like the many roles that come with being an entrepreneur and, you know, not really having a business background. I have an architecture background, just adapting with everything as they come. Sometimes it does end up being a lot, but it's always worth it when I look back and see what we're really working towards. And I would say, actually, maybe this is relatable for some of you guys, but my parents don't really understand how important composting is. At first, they're like, this stuff smells, you're bringing it home into our backyard. What is the whole point of this, you know? And I've really had to step by step like walk them through why this is so important. And now I think they're seeing it more and more because of how everybody's responding to it. So that's definitely been a challenge, but we're still working through it. I've transformed my backyard into this whole like composting station where we're like washing bins and sorting compost. Yeah, it's been a cool process in that sense. My dad built us like a shed that we use, so it's rainproof. All of that. The best part of the experience has been, yeah, just meeting the people. Even you guys, just hearing about what awesome initiatives you guys have going there, and it really inspires me too. Um, Seeing people who are really passionate about sustainability and just always working towards something that's larger than ourselves. I would have never expected when I thought of this idea probably like 3 a.m. that it would be what it is now, with so many supporters and people rooting for us. So that's been really inspiring.
That's really amazing. Also, I just want to say that I incredibly relate to like having to get your family on board to the whole composting idea. I remember like coming home after my freshman fall semester or term and being like super gung ho and like, we're going to do this, like mom and dad and all my brothers and sisters. And they were like, this is gross. Like it took a very long time. Like we're I guess at this point 3 years into like my family's composting routine, and my sister like is still confused about like where to take the food scraps and stuff, but we're working on it. It's a work in progress. So
Yeah. I remember during the pandemic, I just told my parents, we're not throwing out our organic waste. We're just going to keep it in the freezer. And they said, we don't have much room in the freezer. And I said, I am working on a solution as we speak. So I was racing against time to find a solution, but I'm glad that we have something now that we're using ourselves.
You were also just briefly mentioning earlier, sort of one of the best parts of the job being the connections that you get to make. And I would love to hear you talk a little bit more about specifically this connection that you are sort of mediating in New York City between more like urban residents and rural farmers, and what that's been like, and how Groundcycle, or I guess the role that Groundcycle plays in connecting these two seemingly disparate groups of people. I mean, like, New York City is the concrete jungle. So how do you mediate that, and like why is that important to you?
Yeah, I'm a native New Yorker and I grew up in Brooklyn. I think growing up, I wasn't so connected with my food because for a lot of us who grow up in cities, our food comes in supermarkets, wrapped in plastic, and we never really know where it even comes from. So, um, what Groundcycle is trying to do is just educate people about where their food is actually coming from, and that your waste isn't just something that you leave on the sidewalk and it gets taken away. You don't have any idea where it goes. We're really dedicated to this educational aspect and highlighting farmers and how hard they work for producing the food and just being stewards of the land. Yeah, I think just connecting the two and getting the two to understand each other has been really important to us. And I guess one story I can share about the farmers that I've been working with is that we love working with smaller farms. And we actually work with one main farm, but I realized that, well, my mom and I realized that we knew this mushroom farmer probably like also in Long Island. And we looked into it and realized that this smaller mushroom farm was probably like 1 block away from this farm that we've been working with. So we've gotten to connect the two and get the smaller farm's produce distributed to Brooklyn because they didn't have the resources to do that because they're a smaller scale. But even just like connecting farmers with each other is important because it's just a community that is building on each other. So that's been awesome.
Yeah, my next question that I wanted to touch on is that, well, last time we talked, you also were talking a little bit about how green programs in New York City haven't really been like equally distributed. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about like unequal access to green programs in New York, and also how Groundcycle fits into that.
Yeah. I live in South Brooklyn, and for those of you who don't know, there's Prospect Park in South Brooklyn, and I think south to Prospect Park, there's a lot of neighborhoods that don't get a lot of the resources that is available to other people in New York City. And I've lived in South Brooklyn my whole life, so I've realized that, you know, city bikes, they don't get here. A lot of the things that I find happening in the city that are cool, it's like half of the map is completely, wiped out, and we're kind of forgotten about. So that's why when I started Groundcycle, it was important for us to allow anybody in Brooklyn to sign up, no matter if you're in the far corner. You know, we'll service you and we'll help you. I think that has been really important to us. And yeah, I think with the larger, with everything else, the compost hub is also an example of how we're serving communities, is allowing this public food scrap drop off for people who can't pay for a service. And it's also been really amazing because we see a lot of the same people come out week after week, and they get to know each other. Maybe they've lived on the same block for 20 years, but they've never even seen each other. And that's a reality here in New York. So just getting people to come out and share ideas and all of that. So we hope to expand our drop-off program to other areas in Brooklyn as soon as we can, and even larger in the city, in all the boroughs as soon as we can, because there's just so much work to be done. And we're working as hard as we can to do that. And I've met amazing people who all have been really on board with helping with whatever skills that they have. I think that's also important because I think I'm just a testament that you don't have to be an expert at anything to make something happen. As long as you are willing to put in the work, you can really make a difference. For Groundcycle, we've almost collected 50,000 pounds of compost at this point. That'll happen at the end of this weekend or next weekend. So I started Groundcycle saying that if I'm diverting my own waste, that's enough. I don't need to be, doing it for everyone, but if everyone wants me to help, I'm down to help too.
That benchmark is amazing. Also, I just want to say, I was looking in normal Zoom calls, you can like do reactions and do the little like hand claps. And I was like looking on my toolbar. Apparently, you can't do that in webinars, but round of applause. That's really extraordinary. Super cool. I have a question going off that. I think in the past you've mentioned that the composting system specifically in New York is like a little it's not very evenly distributed in terms of access based on like what type of building you're in. And so I'm wondering, even after the pandemic is over, do you see Groundcycle continuing to be a solution, especially in these situations where access is a problem, where the city wasn't providing composting beforehand? And then kind of rolling that into the next question, which is like, what are your visions for the future? And also knowing that we're not going to be hopefully in the pandemic forever. do you see Groundcycle having a life beyond that, even if New York is to start back up its municipal composting system?
Yeah, even when the brown bin program did exist, it actually never reached all of New York City. And that's why they couldn't make it mandatory, because if not everybody has access to it, how can you make it mandatory? Um, and in my neighborhood in Midwood, I never got the brown bin, even though I live in a single family home, which brown bins also don't cater to people who live in apartment buildings, over 10 units, I believe. And that's a huge population of New York City that is getting left out as well.
Practically.
Yeah, so I think that Groundcycle definitely does still have a life after COVID, because I think a lot of the problem with the brown bins was the unequal access and also not enough education. And like I said, we're all about educating people to be mindful of where their food is coming from and connecting the two, because once you understand that they're so in tune with each other, you never really want to waste these like valuable resources again. And I guess I'll share another statistic where I recently looked, and 26% of our bin swap users have never composted before. That's a fourth of our users started composting with us. And whether that's because everybody's at home and more conscious of everything that's piling up around them, or we're just making it so easy and exciting for people to compost with us. Everybody gets a report of how many pounds they've diverted each week, and how much that's equivalent to miles driven in a car and carbon CO2 emissions. So you really get to understand your impact, and you feel like you're a part of this larger community who's all working towards one thing. Versus, I think the brown bins, like the photo that I showed you guys previously, if you see so much trash just piled up in these brown bins, it's really, it makes you not trust the system, right? If you look in a brown bin and you see a random shoe in it that's not compostable, you're going to be really disillusioned and not want to even do it, because you don't even know if it can be trusted. And just, yeah, there's so many contaminants that kind of deter people from doing that. So I think all of that combined, we put a lot of care into everything we do. I think I saw in the chat, is everything hand sifted? Yeah, so there's various points of basically the user at home is doing their best of not getting any contaminants in the bin, and then it gets to me, and I actually sort a lot of this stuff by hand, and none of us are perfect. So even, the most aware person will sometimes have twist ties or, produce stickers in their bins. I've even gotten like forks and spoons and fruit peelers. We accidentally do that and we don't mean it. So on each step of the way, we're taking out those contaminants. And the last step is actually just at the farm, where obviously a metal fork is not going to decompose. So that'll get taken out at the very end. But yeah, we're doing our best. We take a lot of care into what we do, and we're always trying to keep it exciting for people. So even we do have an option for our bin swaps to not receive produce. It's a compost only plan, but we still give everybody a small piece of produce as like a thank you, because we want them to understand this is what you're putting your waste towards, is growing this new food.
That's awesome. It's listening to you talk, it sounds like New Yorkers are just about as bad composters as Dartmouth people are. There's some pretty gnarly stuff that ends up in our compost streams. And I actually like a year or so ago was like at the college's compost site getting some compost for the organic farm, and there were like metal spoons in it and everything, which is not great. But it does sound like you guys imbue a ton of care at each and every step, which is incredible. And arguably something that, you know, the city might not be able to do with its brown bin program. There just might not be enough like bandwidth and attention that you are all able to provide through Groundcycle. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I was literally going to say the same thing. I feel like at Dartmouth we struggle so much with like waste sorting and like communicating like to students like what can be composted, what can be recycled, and keeping all that straight. And like, to be honest, I don't think I have it down perfectly either, because it's like it can be so confusing. So it's cool to see that like you're working on educational, I guess like education on how to compost.
Yeah, I think it's important just to say that as long as you're doing your best, that's enough, you know? None of us are perfect. And I think a lot of people, you know, the whole zero waste thing is emphasizing perfection, and that's really hard to attain. So we need to make it more accessible, and we need to be more understanding of people that, you know, sometimes we have so much going on. Like composting is my world right now, but it's definitely just a small part of everybody else's world. And I think it's just so important to be understanding of everybody's situation and accepting of people who want to do better. And that's also something that's so important to me about composting, is that every single person can do it because we're all eating. There's not a single person can argue is not producing any amount of organic waste. If there is, then please send them my way, because I'm really curious.
I love that. Composting is like the common denominator, the unifier among us all.
Yeah, just like COVID right now, you know, we can all relate to this one experience. Like composting is another thing that really should bond us together.
Yeah, I was also wondering like what your education initiatives kind of look like. And I'm wondering because I'm wondering how we could learn from that and apply it to with Dartmouth.
Yeah, I think just the way that we're set up with the produce and compost aspect is a large part of it. I think composting is pretty self-explanatory, even though it might seem a little bit complicated with like, can this go in the bin, and like, you know, compostable plastics, where do those go, and are they actually good for the environment, and all of that. But what it boils down to is organic waste, and how that can be recycled through the earth. So it's just a simple idea that I think even like first graders can understand. And I mean, I think you guys' platform is a great example, and I try to do as many talks to students and yeah, just any group that is interested. I think education is important at a young level, because yeah, I think a lot of people, you know, in an older generation might be hesitant because they've been brought up a certain way and are not used to this idea of composting. But once you get trained at a young age and about this like simple idea, you really just never go back. It makes it really hard to do the wrong thing if you know what's the right thing to do.
I love that. And I think that part of what y'all do so well at Groundcycle is like that storytelling to, you know, as a part of your educational strategy, I suppose, is the storytelling component and making it so tangible for people, you know, even in just bringing them the fresh produce, but also having them take part in the composting, like in the, you know, transport and dropping it off and just be really involved. I feel like that is crucial to, for like buy-in, if anything. Um, so thank you for that answer. And I think we are going to, in just a moment, open it up to Q&A. But we want to give you one of our last questions. We are asking every environmental change maker this. And the question is, what is one thing that's sustaining you right now?
One thing that is sustaining me right now is, that's a good question.
Big or small?
Sorry.
Sorry, I said big or small, doesn't matter.
I think one thing that's sustaining me right now is I definitely do feel a momentum of the new year, and feeling this refresh, because starting Groundcycle it's not like an easy thing. And I think just having the time to like center yourself and realize like what you're working towards and having this restart of a new year is really important, because then we can re-strategize and rethink about what we're working towards and be excited about what's to come. So I think it's definitely, just the new year is really exciting.
Here's to 2021, fingers crossed.
Yeah, may it be better than 2020.
Well, thank you for that answer. And yeah, I think we'll go ahead over to the Q&A. See what we got.
So I'm looking here, and one question is the non-compostable items from the compost sorted out by hand, which you already answered, but they were also wondering how this could be scaled.
And I think I'll tack on to that. Somebody asked earlier in the chat if you have any plans of scaling this to other cities as well.
Yeah, I think our plan is to have a model that can be duplicated anywhere. And that idea actually really excites me, because pretty early on, one of my friends said, I think I'm going to move back to Mexico City and I would love to do something like that there. And that was really cool for me, because really what we're doing is just connecting people with farmers, and farmers exist everywhere and should be supported everywhere. So I love that idea of bringing Groundcycle to other cities, and creating more hubs. And how can it be scaled is, I think I see the impact of the compost hub where people can drop off with us. And obviously, in a 2.5-hour time frame each week, so many people are coming to us. That's really cool, because it obviously multiplies the impact. But I also see bin swap users being really inventive, and one person who's super passionate is going around to their entire block saying, hey, we know about this like new composting service, want to join in on like a group account so that we can make it easier for Groundcycle, and then we can also get a discount of compost pickups. And I think that's just really incredible to see people really rally up the troops to work towards something better. And I love that idea of like teamwork, and we're all about it. We are, still relatively new, and a lot of it is still very grassroots, but I think that's what's so beautiful about what we're doing is a community building experience.
And if you're looking for any cities to expand to and you want to Indianapolis is sorely in need of a compost collection system. So we'll
I
just
will
have to chat more about that.
Yeah, I will note that.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, another question was, is there a benefit for farmers to join the program? They say, as I assume for the compost, they still need to take time to turn the compost into usable waste, if I'm understanding the system correctly.
Yeah, so we actually pay our farmers for processing the compost because a lot of people don't understand, but it's so much work to do it. And, you know, if you have the time and resources and space to do it on your own, you can, have a tumbler in your backyard or do various methods like worm composting and bokashi and all of that. But because we're in New York City and a lot of us don't have space, that's why I've worked with these farmers or thought to work with these farmers. And we definitely want to compensate them for their time and work. Because they're the experts. And the other benefit for farmers is us helping them distribute their food that they might have not been able to distribute to so many households in Brooklyn right now. Especially in the beginning of the pandemic when everybody was wanting, grocery deliveries. Nobody wanted to leave their house. Everybody was like scared to do so. That's really what, caused us to do this at-home pickup service.
We have another question, and it is, what does it mean for composting to be privatized rather than done through the city of New York?
Yeah, I mean, I would love for there to be just citywide access to composting, but because I think a lot of what the city does and what our government does is out of individual control, I think it's better to start even a private initiative rather than just waiting for the government to kind of get their priorities straight and prioritize composting. Because, we in New York City, we have goals to be carbon neutral by a certain date, but by the city just slashing the composting budget from 28 million to 2.8 million, and just, I don't know, it's kind of disillusioning to completely rely on the city resources to for composting, because there's so little we can do to control that outside of lobbying for it and telling the city how much it cares, how much we care about it. In New York City, we have a New York Save Our Compost coalition that's really strong, and so many people who are so passionate about composting who've rallied for the 2.8 million to get reinstated, because it was originally going to be zero. So it makes a difference, people rallying up against these, the city not caring about composting, but I think there's just so much to be done. And I also think that by privatizing it, Groundcycle isn't a nonprofit, right? We're a business, but we're a socially responsible business. I want to use the resources that we obtain from people who can afford it and can really care about this to help others who cannot. So both things are so important, and I'm never gonna lose focus of serving people who can't pay, because I believe that everybody should have access to it. But yeah, for me, quitting my job and everything and working really night and day on it, I I think it's been successful so far because of all the people who really care.
I'm going to bounce off what you said because I actually have a personal question that you've mentioned a couple times. There's so much to be done, which is definitely true. And that's like a weight or a stressor that I feel quite frequently when it comes to environmental work, because it's true, there is so much to be done. And I'm wondering how you manage that. Like, how do you decide like this is enough for a day's work and to go to bed content with that? How do you know, are there limits that you draw for yourself or for Groundcycle of how much you can actually expand and like have it be sustainable?
Yeah, I mean, if I could dream it, you know, Groundcycle would be all over the US by now. You know, if I could do all of that work, that's what would have happened by now. But yeah, I think it's important to, I'm bad at this too because I always want to do more. So I think it's important just to surround yourself with people who can really ground you. Um, my support system has been incredible throughout this entire journey. Um, I actually didn't mention this before, but for somebody who started a pickup and drop off service, I don't even drive. Um, I don't know how to drive. So from the very beginning, it was just all of my friends who maybe didn't even know what composting was, who were willing to learn and also to fill their cars with a bunch of food scraps.
That is an amazing friend right there.
So many friends who I had to, first of all, explain what composting was, you know. So I think it's just surrounding yourself with really supportive people is important. And realizing, again, we can't be perfect. Yeah.
Let's see. I have time to answer one more question. Somebody asked, is there any form of quality checking for donations to the community fridges from businesses, restaurants, or individuals? In my community, there's been a problem of only receiving donations of expired or almost expired foods, leftovers, scraps, etc. And our community members deserve better than that.
Yeah, I think again, it's teamwork and organizers who are so important in all of these initiatives. A lot of our fridges here in Brooklyn have teams of people who are checking up on the fridge every, 3 hours, who are dropping off produce that's being saved from supermarkets and businesses. So yeah, I think that's like one last thing I would like to encourage everybody to do is just get involved and volunteer for anything that you think is a worthy cause, because yeah, really every person makes a difference. Just like a couple of hours of help here and there really do help an organization that's trying to do better for everybody to continue it. So yeah, I think just that's one last thing that I would like to shout out to everybody is, if you guys have any free time and you're passionate about anything, just start looking into opportunities and reaching out and getting started instead of kind of sitting idly, because it felt really bad for me to realize that this was a big problem and nobody was doing anything about it, and I wasn't getting responses. So that's how Groundcycle started.
That's awesome. That is a great inspirational note to end on. I love that, like a nice call to action. Yeah, and we have a couple thank yous to say before we close out the night. First of all, we want to say thank you to everybody in the audience for coming. We really appreciate y'all sharing this time and space with us. We also want to say thank you to the Magnuson Center for funding this event and the Sustainability Office for making it happen and promoting it. And then finally, a massive, massive thank you to you, Vivian. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your Wednesday night with us. We are incredibly grateful, and thank you for your zest for compost. You are the best like compost salesperson out there. I'm certainly inspired to get some decomposition going and, you know, make it happen here at Dartmouth as well, because actually we haven't mentioned this, but currently the campus composting system is sort of on a hiatus because of COVID. So yeah, this was really great to hear from you.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for inviting me. And I'm really inspired by you guys, what you guys are doing at Dartmouth, and all the students. You know, you guys are the future.
Thanks. No pressure.
Yeah, thank you so much. And also, before everyone hops off, I just wanted to remind everyone that we have one more Changemaker event happening next Wednesday with Carter Strickland, who is the current New York State Director for the Trust for Public Land, which is like a nonprofit conservation organization that works to like build parks. And he's also kind of got a background in environmental law, and he also worked for the city of New York, actually working a few years ago, working on sustainable infrastructure projects. So, and also coincidentally, he actually was a bin swap member of Groundcycle. So kind of a small world, I guess.
Everything's connected.
Yeah.
Closed loop, full cycle. If you take anything away from tonight.
Close the loop, guys.
Sweet. Thank you so much, everybody, again, for your time. We appreciate it. Have a wonderful Wednesday evening.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.